Hey everybody, welcome to this week's live stream. Hope everybody's doing great today. So we are going to be casting some 3D prints. So I've gotten back into firing up the printers and everything with the new year. And I was kind of going through some of the stuff that I had on hand, and I love doing these wavy ones. Let me get an overhead view, because I think that camera is it's tough to capture white. It just kind of reflects. So hopefully this camera is a little bit better, maybe, sort of. There we go. So you can see the texture of these. I really love casting these, and I had a bunch of them, so I thought let's cast some of those. And I got something else that I want to do. A while ago I kind of played around with creating round honeycombs. Now these are different from Mark's, Hobble Creek. He does it where there's honeycomb all the way around. This is a little bit different, and I wanted to kind of play with this. I've had these for a while actually, but what I wanted to do, I didn't have my Gatling molds when I made these originally. Now they're kind of a tight fit. Like really, it would be a little bit better to have just a little bit smaller diameter in these, but I didn't want to have to go through and remodel all those. So let's give this a shot. Let's see if this works with the Gatling mold. That might make things a little bit easier to demold. I don't think that that's going to work for every situation. These are too big for sure. I'd have to remodel these. These were built to fit perfectly in a PVC pipe, and typically that's what I would recommend using. The nice thing about clear PVC is you can see exactly what's going on. If there's any like air bubbles getting trapped, you can kind of play around with stuff. So it is kind of nice. You're not going to be able to really see in on a mold like this, especially, either way, you're not going to see it, but especially for the solid color ones. What I'm going to do though, using the kind of semi-translucent ones, one of the nice things about these, and I'll be switching to these, I got a couple of the red ones left, so if it doesn't really matter to you, I have those still in inventory. You can pick up the translucent ones from Turner's Warehouse right now. But what I found with the semi-translucent ones is if you put a bright light behind it, it's probably not being captured on camera here, but if you do backlight it with a pretty strong light, you can basically create marks. Like you can pour to a specific line, and that's what's going to be kind of an interesting thing, is kind of dialing in and figuring out what is the right amount of resin to put in first. Because if you fill it like to the, maybe not the top, but if you fill it too far and you're trying to push this thing in, the resin just kind of flows out basically. So we'll kind of be dialing that in a little bit, having some fun with it, and it should be pretty fun. These 3D prints are pretty cool. Now, as I've said in the past, I've used FDM printers, so like the typical 3D printer that you think of that has like a spool of filament, and what it's doing is melting the filament and then printing it on a bed, from the bed up. What I use, I've switched to resin printers, and it's kind of a different deal. You're using UV resin, number one, and it's printing a little bit different. It prints upside down basically. So it's printing each layer, and it's kind of growing the opposite direction. It's pretty fun. There are some drawbacks to resin printing. It's way messier. You're dealing with liquids. You also have to clean the prints off after they're done printing through either, depending on which resin you're using, either water or isopropyl or denatured alcohol. So it's a little bit more involved, a little bit more, you got air, like VOCs in the air. So you want to be, in a well ventilated area, similar to, resin casting. You want to make sure that you're either wearing a proper ventilated mask with the carbon filters, the VOC filters, or be in an area where you can, blow it out the window, blow any, keep fresh air ventilating so you're not breathing the fumes. And especially also when you're dealing with like isopropyl alcohol, that's another place. You want to be wearing a mask when you're dealing with that stuff. You don't want to be breathing the fumes of even the alcohol, because it's not, if you've ever worked with isopropyl alcohol, I would actually say, at least for me, the fumes from isopropyl versus denatured alcohol are much worse. It's just a stronger scent So which tells you if you can smell it, then you're breathing it in. That might be a good indication. But denatured alcohol is a little bit, and they call it something different in like Europe and everywhere else but America. Methylated spirits or something. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what type of alcohol it is. It's like the fuel alcohol. But anyway, so there's a little bit more going on, but the advantages are, and this is why I use it, it's much more, like the final product is much more similar in like hardness, brittleness, let's say, polishability, sandability, even kind of cutting. It's much more similar to alumilite, or like your typical casting resin. It's not even doesn't even have to be like alumilite, like your epoxies and stuff. It's just when you're turning it, it's a smoother turn. It can sand and polish excellent, and so it's a little less brittle. The other issue is, let me see if I have an example here somewhere. Where did that? Oh, here's a good example. The other thing about it is, compared to the filament style printers, I'm going to do an overhead. So this is a print that's like a dog paw and bones print. And what I want to point out is, compared, let me get a little pointer. That'd be super helpful. Let me get a pointer. Hold on real quick. We'll use an Allen wrench. So if you're looking at this, let me get on camera here. It's all backwards and reversed. The bone in this, it's like a big blob, right? Like that's a big amount. That the white stuff is all the 3D printed material, and this was actually done with an FDM style printer, so like the filament style. The problem is it's laying down lots of thin layers, and it's very difficult to get it extremely smooth. Now, there are areas that are pretty smooth in this, but if you notice, like the tips of the paws, there's like holes in it. And what ends up happening is when you turn it and sand it and all that stuff, it just doesn't lay down. It's not solid necessarily. And the better you are at printing and dialing in your settings and all that stuff, the better it's going to be in the end. But it's more difficult, let's just say, to print large blobs of 3D print stuff compared to your resin printers. That stuff, it's printing a solid thing. And it in the end, it's a lot more like if you were just casting it in place or something. Where's I have some pens, I thought. Well, I can show you models. So like the actual 3D prints of some examples of stuff that we've done with resin, and it just ends up working out a little bit better. Maybe. Yeah. You don't have any big blobs, I guess. We'll just go with these two. It's not noticeable. So what I want to say is it's not noticeable if you're doing something with just thin walls, like in honeycomb, probably even with the wavy ones. This is a pretty thick band, but if all you're doing is cutting into a thin line of material, and sanding and polishing, it's not very noticeable. Like that works fine on FDM printers. It's where you have like large kind of blobs of stuff. So like these are hearts, and that's a solid heart down there. Same thing with the stars. And you could even do like even larger areas. But with resin, cutting into that, you're not going to find any holes in it. It's going to work a lot better. So it just kind of depends. The other thing about the FDM printers is the bond between the resin and the filament material. Sometimes it's not awesome, and it's because of the materials that you're using. I would say that the layer lines that you get with 3D printing with the filament style probably actually increases the bond. It makes it better because you can get really, really smooth walls and everything and lines on a resin printer. But I just find that the bond between the casting resin and then the filament, or your 3D model, 3D print thing, Generally, that's going to be a better bond with the resin printing. So there's kind of like pluses and minuses with each of it, and it kind of depends on, if you wanted to get into this, it depends on what type of things you want to print out, I think. That being said, you can do, you know, pretty much the same thing with a filament printer, and they're like I said, you don't have to deal with liquids and cleaning stuff and alcohol and fumes. Sometimes they do smell. You got to watch yourself with ABS and ASA filaments. That stuff can, I would put it on the same level as dealing with the fumes from resin printing or resin casting. You got to really watch yourself with that. But, you know, PLA, I'm pretty sure that the PETG, trying to think of other ones. Pretty much most of the other ones are fairly safe. It may smell, you may smell something, but it's not really toxic, I don't think. But do your own research. I don't know everything about all of the different fumes and stuff that come off of all of the different filaments. But typically, you know, PLA is going to be easy. But certain materials are more brittle than others. But since I haven't done filament printing or really looked into it too much for many years at this point, and so some of the newer materials where they're kind of combining materials, they may be a little bit better at doing it for, you know, pen turning stuff or you know, this type of application. They might have made things that are a little bit more flexible so they're not so brittle. That's typically what I find is the filament type prints are kind of brittle in the end, and you got to kind of watch yourself a little bit. Again, you got adhesion issues, possibly. You've got some brittleness, and they don't necessarily cut and sand as well. And bare minimum, you're going to kind of feel the difference. It's like a different density, hardness when you're cutting. And so a lot of times you can actually kind of feel that. Or when you're sanding it, that material may sand faster than the resin, you know, like your Alumilite or whatever. So just a couple of the different little things that I wanted to kind of point out. But overall, it's pretty fun. If you are thinking about getting into 3D printing, you know, not only can you do a lot of cool stuff with, you know, turning if you're making pen blanks and stuff, or whatever, you can do all kinds of like really useful stuff. You can print out things like little tools or organizational aids or just random little toys like you see a lot of people printing. But there's a lot of support out there. There's a lot of free models that you can get to just print out. And if you're jumping in, you know, like the filament printers are pretty cool. They're pretty simple to use for the most part. You have to have some computer knowledge. You know, like you can't just not be able to do anything on a computer and expect this to work too well for you. But you know, it's pretty fun. So give it a thought. Now, in the description of this video, I have links to the printers that I use. Now, I bought a new one, just to let you know. So the two that I have and these are resin 3D printing ones. This is the Elegoo Saturn, the big one, and then this one's the Mars 2 Pro. Both of those at this point, that's the original Saturn version. I think they're on, I don't know, there must have been, Elegoo seems to come out with like 1 or 2 upgrades every year, it seems like. So that one's actually pretty old, but it works pretty fine. And then the Mars 2 Pro, that thing is like ancient. And I really just kind of bought the smaller one to do testing with different stuff. I didn't want to have to fill a giant vat of resin if I'm, you know, testing out dyes or additives or whatever. I just wanted something small, so I went with that. Now, I have purchased a Mars 4 Ultra. It's got a few things that make it way better. So if you're looking to get into resin printing and you want the kind of smaller footprint, I would recommend, if you're going to get an Elegoo, go with the Mars 4 Ultra. That's what I linked to in the description, and that's the one that I bought, actually, the new one. If you're going to go with the Saturn, I would probably recommend, that one's a little bit more. You're looking at like $500 for the Saturn, 400 to 500, I think, somewhere in that range. I would really recommend going with the Saturn 3 Ultra. And the main thing is, I don't have an example. I haven't even unboxed my new printer yet, but I can show you something. One of the reasons that I went with that, and another brand that does this, there's a few different brands. So I've just kind of stuck with Elegoo. Frozen, P-H-R-O-Z-E-N, is a really good brand to go with. They're a little bit more costly, but they do have some excellent features. But one of the main things that I don't like about the printers that I have that you can get different stuff. This is the build plate. This is where it adheres, and you're basically, it's printing onto this thing. The issue is, this is a ball head joint. Let me get my Allen wrench real quick here. So this is a ball head, and it's got these set screw things. The problem with this design is there's only 2 set screws, one in the front, one on the side. There's nothing on, you know, the front or the back. And this can come loose. This is very crucial. This thing needs to be dead flat and perfect on, you know, the bottom of the printer. It has to be, you know, not cockeyed or anything like that. So you have to level it, basically, is what they call it. And it has to be level. And so if this thing comes just a little bit off, it can cause you to have failed prints, which is a pain. The opposite design, the other design for hooking this, for having the build plate attach and all that stuff, is a 4 screw method, and that's way better. So the Mars 4 Ultra has switched to that design. Same with the Saturn 3 Ultra. All right, so my recommendations, if you're going to go with the Elegoo, those are the 2 that I would probably go with. Otherwise, you can look into Frozen, Any Cubic, that's another brand. I think they might have the 4-bolt system as well. I think that's a better way to go. Most people say that pretty much once you set that, it really doesn't want to come loose. So I think that's just kind of a better way to go. Trying to think. And then, you know, of course, every new iteration's got, you know, a bunch of random upgrades and features and stuff. We're kind of getting to the point where a lot of the newer features and things are not that important. So you could, and especially for doing things like this, I mean, Chad Schimmel still has the Mars original, and that's what he was using. I think he's going to be upgrading soon. We were just talking on the phone, but I mean, you can still get great results with those. A lot of what happens is you're going to get a little bit faster speeds, so it's not going to take as long to print. But we're kind of getting to the point where, you know, every new feature that a lot of these, you know, little, you know, Elegoo and Anycubic and Frozen, all those brands that are kind of like the little consumer grade, you know, 3D printers in resin printing, a lot of these upgrades aren't that big of a deal. So you don't necessarily have to get the newest one. But in this case, if you are going to go with the Elegoo, I do recommend going with the Mars 4 Ultra. If you're going for the smaller footprint of the Saturn 3 Ultra, just for that connection with the build plate, I think it's much better. And like I said, if you're looking, you can, I don't think there's that much difference between Elegoo, Anycubic, Frozen, or any of these other brands. Like, they're all pretty similar with, you know, some have slightly different features or whatever, but I think that they're all going to do what you want. But I would definitely look for one that's got the 4-point build plate, whatever, attachment system. All right, so let me stop. I've talked a lot about resin printing. Let's see here. I'm going to go up and see. So it looks like Mike McEwen. So is Mike at, does anybody know if it's the woodworking shows? Excuse me. Events. Let's see. I'm just looking it up because I think that's what is going on in Atlanta. Maybe. I don't want to stay updated. What's going on here? Yep, he's at the woodworking shows. So anyway, that's cool. If you've never been to one of those, it's really cool. You get to see lots of tools and kind of look around at a lot of different stuff. They got tons of stuff going on at those things. Let's see. We also got Brian over at TBC's here. He was here a little early. Vinny's here. Paul. Kim's doing line dancing. That's cool. And Mark. Old Man River. Mike Doyle. Let's see here. The Wood Butcher. And Mark Ellis is here. Steve. Jennifer. I'm doing great. Thank you. Pretty good. Yeah. And actually, just another minor update on the knee. My meniscus tear. I've switched to a different, I think I mentioned this last week, but I've had actually like a week or so of appointments now. So I switched to a different physical therapy place, and man, totally different story. They're like, I wasn't, as far as I'm concerned, it's not like you need to leave physical therapy like in pain or something like that, but you need to work. And I just was, the old place, I was like, we're not even doing anything. Like, I need I need to get some physical therapy going on here. So the new place, they are kicking my butt. So, I mean, I've been sore since I started there with muscle soreness, but I'm also feeling, it's also getting way stronger within, you know, the course of a week, basically. Noticeable difference. It's a great place, great facility too. And just what I have in my mind when I walk into the door of the physical therapist, this is what I expected, not the other place. So it's pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully I'll be able to get back to snowboarding and doing other things, running. I don't know, we haven't really talked about like a timeline, but really in my own brain, I would like to get on the mountain. I'm not going to necessarily be doing any double black diamonds or anything like that, anything crazy. But I'd like to start snowboarding in a couple weeks, hopefully. And I think I can. A lot of it actually does come down. We actually, the physical therapist and I, for anybody that is going through like an injury or anything like that, she brought up an interesting point, because I was telling her that I'm just not particularly confident, with that knee. I'm like, it's in my brain, in the back of my mind, and in some cases I can tell that it's weaker. And she was saying that if there's studies that show people get re-injured in the same injury if you don't have confidence. Like that confidence level has something to do with it. Now, I don't know if the confidence is causing an injury or what. I have a feeling that if you're not confident, that means that you're kind of favoring it, which is something that I know that I do with this leg. And I think that you're operating it differently, which causes an injury probably. But I think that the more confident you get, the less likely you are to get injured again. So I'm liking that mentality thing. So anyway, that's what's up with me. Let's see here. Anybody else? If I missed you, I apologize. Let's see. Michael DeQuattro, what's up? Tony Atkins, Ann's here. Nice. And scrolling. If I missed any questions, Vinny was asking, so I have Elegoo printers. Like I said, I just kind of went with that. Chad had Elegoo, and I'm like, I'm just going to go with him because I know him. Go with that brand because I know Chad, and he can kind of help me with it. They're middle of the pack. They're not anything super special, but they've been working pretty fine for me, I think. And here's the thing. I am not an expert with resin 3D printing, with regular 3D printing. I've kind of looked into some things. I don't do everything the way everyone says you're supposed to do with it. So I'm not an expert. There's much smarter people. But the thing is, like, there's only so many people that really do this for this type of thing. So I think that I know a little bit more than other people, especially if you're just getting started. I can help if you have any questions. Let's see here. Yeah, CJ, I had the magnetic plate on the Saturn, and I got to be honest, I don't think I recommend that. It can, I don't know. It worked fine, and it was kind of cool, but I don't really feel like it's necessary. That's one of the main things. So the way that the magnetic plate system works for these printers, let's see if I have, well, I can't really show you, but the way it works is on that build plate, you have to glue on a magnet basically, and then you've got these thin little, just like a sheet metal type of a thing that magnet, just sticks to that magnet. The problem is, if the way that these printers work, there's a lot of suction happening. It prints a super, super fine layer, like one layer at a time. It cures the UV resin, and we're talking like, I think it's like 0.05 millimeters. All right, so we're talking a thin layer, right? But depending on what's going on with the print and how many prints and how much stuff's going on, what happens is that build plate comes down into the vat. And there's a clear screen on the bottom of the vat. I can show you that. I don't really want to disassemble those printers right now, but this is what holds the resin, and underneath there's a clear, it should be clear, this one's pretty jacked, I need to replace this sheet, but there's a clear thing, clear sheet on the bottom. The build plate comes down and is 0.05 millimeters away from the bottom, and then a UV light shines and cures a specific pattern, a very thin layer, but it's whatever pattern that layer is. The problem is when it pulls up again and then goes back down, the resin actually sticks to this plastic thing, right? And so the thing is, the more surface area of cured print, cured resin that is stuck between this vat and the build plate, it pops off. Like the resin's kind of curing onto this thing too, even though it's non-stick, it still kind of cures to it. And then that build plate kind of it raises up and unsticks it from there and then goes back down for the next layer. The problem is all you're dealing with is magnetic force. And sometimes that thing can shift. And so it's just, like I said, I didn't really have any problems when I had it on. But at the same time, I also just don't really think it's entirely necessary because you can peel the stuff off. It's supposed to make it easier to get the prints off the build plate. It's not that hard to get the prints off a normal, non-magnetic build plate. And here's the kicker. So what happened was, the reason I don't have one on the Saturn anymore, because there was no reason to take it off necessarily, but if you accidentally leave it in the alcohol bucket for extended periods of time, now I didn't leave it for like a day, but half an hour to an hour, that alcohol eats away the glue that's holding the magnet on. And so and I did that. I left it in for like 30 minutes to an hour. And then I printed something later that day and I was getting nothing, nothing would print. It was just failed print. And so that magnet, the glue came off. And so it adds another thing that can cause problems. It's up to you, if you want to do that, but it is an extra cost. You got to do all the magnet and all that kind of stuff, glue it on. And it is neat, but I don't think it's particularly useful. It costs money and it could cause failed prints if something goes wrong. So I don't know. I don't know that it's really worth it. Let's see here. Tony Herrera, what's up, man? Let's see. So, and Michael Barr, no, dude, I haven't done any snowboarding. Although I got to be honest, this season in Tahoe has been absolutely, I want to say that this season is probably one of the worst I have seen since we moved back up, which has been like 12 years. It's just not that good. And I like going in the trees, going, off piste, they call it. So not on the runs. I like to be off in the trees, playing around in powder and whatever. And the thing is, there's really not that much snow. So it wouldn't be particularly amazing for me. Like I wouldn't I wouldn't really have as much enjoyment as I normally would. I like going on the runs too sometimes, but the problem is we haven't had snow, which means that there's less runs open because like the whole mountain, we don't even have enough snow to have like the entire mountain open. Maybe we do now, but we haven't up until, I don't know, sometime in January. I don't know if anybody was 100% open. I still don't know if anybody is 100% open right now up in Tahoe. And so what that means is everybody's on the same run. So I wouldn't even have liked to go. So this knee injury happened in the perfect year, honestly. I'm not missing anything, so it's good. So things are getting a little better. We've had some storms and everything's good. All right, so let's see. Wurzel, how many of those blanks could you get out of a kilogram of resin? Okay, so here's the thing about resin printing, and I'm sorry if everybody wants to see the casting, but I do think there's people that might have questions, and there's a lot of information and a lot of stuff that goes with this. So a kilogram of resin, which I think so it's one of these bottles. I really don't know exactly how many prints I can get out of that. Do I know? I'm trying to think. One thing you have to account for is if there's any supports and platforms and all that stuff, that adds wasted resin to the list. So it kind of depends on what you're doing, but I really don't know how many you can get out of that. One of these, so one thing also is I've found that and I haven't tried every single resin out there. I just don't have enough time to mess with all that stuff and test all these different things. One of the problems for me is it's not like, you see a lot of people that do a lot of testing. If you look at other YouTube channels that do resin printing, the thing is, all they're doing is printing. A lot of people are just printing out a thing and it's done, right? Like there's a lot of people doing like the miniature figurine things. When it's finished, it's done and you know what the results are. It just needs to be printed, cleaned, and you know, post-cured, right? And you know how that print turned out. I mean, really, you don't even have to do anything else with it. For us, the problem is I print it out, I wash it, I cure it, then I have to cast it and wait for that to cure, and then I have to turn it and sand it to see how did it really work. So I just don't have enough time to test a lot of stuff. But what I found is that the Elegoo's ABS-like resin, that has gotten me, it's the least brittle, and there's other ones that are like ABS-like. They're generally going to be a little bit more pliable. They're not going to be so brittle. So ABS-like in general is probably going to be a good one. But that's what I use, the Elegoo ABS-like, and it works pretty good. Are there better ones? Probably. I don't know. They may cost more, you know, for better quality or whatever. I don't know. One brand that a lot of people recommend is Soraya Tech, if you know what that is. I've tried a few of them. Whatever. This stuff works fine. I don't know. I don't see like a massive difference. And if I'm getting good enough results, then I don't really need to find another resin necessarily. So that's about, I think those are going for like about 20 to 30 bucks. It depends on time of year and whatever, per kilogram. But you know, each one of these, this is not that much resin necessarily. So you can get quite a few out of a kilogram of resin. It's just the problem is there's quite a bit of waste, because you know, you got to take the build plate off. It's kind of dripping with resin that's uncured. You're washing off uncured resin. That's the washing part. So you know, you can look at the numbers when you slice one of these. So you put your 3D model in the slicing program and it slices it. It's going to tell you how much this print is going to take, but there's so much extra waste that it's really hard to tell how much you're actually wasting. And if you have failed prints and all, you know, all those types of things, it can kind of add up a little bit. Let's see here. And how fast are they compared to FDM? So one thing I do want to mention about resin printing, the cool thing about it is because of the way that this works, the build plate goes down, and like I was saying, it's curing a very, very thin layer of resin. So the thing is, you can fill the entire build plate up with these, you know, whatever you're printing, you can fill like pretty much the whole thing up, and it cures every point on that build plate at once. So compared to an FDM printer, it's oozing a little line out, right? So if you have like 13 of these things, it can only do one of these at once. So the more things that you add on an FDM printer, the longer it's going to take. The bottleneck with resin printing is the height, all right, because it can cure, you know, so basically what I'm saying is you can print one of these, or you could print 5,000 of these, and each layer is going to cure. Like, it's going to take exactly the same amount of time to print one on a resin printer as it would 25, as long as you can fit them on the build plate, because it's printing every spot on that build plate at once for each layer, whereas FDM printers have to go around and do one thing at a time, right? So more things equals more time. But it does take, you know, so, and I print these like, vertically. I don't orient them horizontally. You could do it horizontal. There's reasons that I do vertical, but, and I'm still debating which way is actually the best way. But if you printed these things flat, like horizontally on the build plate, you know, if it was sitting like this on the build plate, as opposed to what I consider vertical like this. This way, you're looking at like maybe a couple hours, depending on the settings, depending on the height. Something like this is a couple hours, versus this is like 11 to 14, depending on your settings. All right, because there's a ton more layers. So it depends. Generally, as long as you're not printing really tall things, resin printing is probably going to be faster, I would say, for doing more things. You know, if you can fill more things up and print more at once. Oh, yours failed and came unglued. Yeah, not very fun. Yeah, I did like, there are certain things that I liked the flex plate. Like it was handy, But realistically, like, once I took it off, so far I haven't printed anything that I'm like, oh man, I really wish I had that thing still. It's not, I really don't think, if you're getting into this, I don't think you don't need it, for sure. Like I said, and I find that if you can minimize the things that could go wrong, you're going to get better results overall. So that's why, let's see here. Paul in Vegas, what's up? Yeah, I'm looking at the bamboo. There are a lot of things. So, and this is the thing about this. Resin printing has its uses. And like I said, for wood turning, if you're making pens, for pen turners and stuff, like what we're doing, where we're like actually machining it, the big draw is the material, the final product is so much better, I think, for turning and sanding and polishing and all that stuff, even casting. I think it's a better bond. These things are still kind of sticky-ish, even after you cure them. Sometimes, I don't know, it seems to adhere really well. Everything goes really well. So I think it's a good option for that. The drawback is it's a messy, smelly, thing. But FDM printers, I want to get a newer one. I have a pretty old one from, it's a Matter Hackers Pulse brand, and it's fine. But there's a lot of advantages. Like the last year, a lot of advancements have come, like actually useful stuff where you're printing a lot faster. With the bamboo, you got you can print multiple colors, and it's a simple process. There's drawbacks to that system. It's kind of like Apple. You're kind of stuck within their ecosystem, kind of. It's not just like open source like a lot of them are. So there's some drawbacks to bamboo, but from what I've seen, like I know there's a lot of detractors with bamboo. Some people don't like certain things about them, but I think if you're getting into 3D printing and want to get a really good one, I think that's a pretty good way to go. So what I want to use that for, I want to do, there's little tools and things in the shop that I want to make, and like kind of I gotta be honest, don't tell the IRS, but there's a lot of personal things that I want for just me, and certain things in the shop that I want to use FDM printing for. And I'll tell you actually here's one big one. I don't have an example because I haven't printed one yet, but I want to start using 3D printing to create mold housings. So when I make like this mold, well, here's a better example. So, smaller little molds. What I'm doing here is this is like a smaller faux burl, like copying. What I want to do is I've just been kind of using cups and stuff and random things. I want to 3D print a mold housing to pour silicone molds. And so you can design whatever you want. Now, if you're going to be doing silicone mold making, if you're trying to make a mold housing to create, to pour silicone in to create a mold of something, you don't really want to be using resin printing. A lot of silicones react with it, and it doesn't cure properly. So I think that you're better off going with an FDM printer for doing something like that. So like, each type has its pros and cons, let's say. Yeah, I just kind of dove back into the FDM printer stuff. I haven't even used my Pulse for like 2 years or 3. I just kind of gave up on it because the problem that I had was I sell pen blanks, and even though I've never had a failure, when I've turned any of the 3D printed things, like I make the pinstripe blanks, that was actually the big one that I was making. People just don't know exactly what the limitations are of some of this stuff. And I found like when people were drilling them out, it would overheat the 3D printed material and then crack. So people were having issues, and I'm like, I just don't want to answer emails about, I have videos, I have all kinds of resources. I explain everything in the product description, but people don't read anything, and I don't want to deal with this stuff. But I haven't gotten any complaints from anybody using the pinstripe stuff or the honeycombs that I'm selling with the resin. I just kind of gave up on FDM a while ago, but I want to get back into it, and I'm back on a mission to try and really get some chops with 3D modeling. I've dabbled, I've created my own stuff in the past. It's not that hard, it's just really time consuming. So, but with the mold making stuff, and other things that I want to do. I want to learn how to do that, and so I'm kind of getting back into that a little bit. So anyway. Oh, you got the A1? Yeah, nice. Yeah, and the A1's a good one too. And really, if you want to go for something that's actually pretty reasonable, is the P1S, I believe, is the bamboo model. There are some things going on with whatever, but I don't know. I think that things get inflamed. Really, if you look into any resin, or not resin, any 3D printer brand, there you can find a whole host of people complaining about something with bamboo, with Creality, with you know, one of the kind of standbys is Prusa. But I mean, you can find people that are all pissed off and something's wrong with their Prusa too. So I don't know. There's a lot of people that are perfectly happy with their bamboos. So you know how it goes, guys. Just depends on your own, you know, every single thing is going to be different. I can't tell you that it's going to be, that you're going to get, you may get a lemon or something. So the P1, I think at this point, they don't even have the other one. There was one that was P1P or P1S, or you know, P1P, I think is the one. The P1S is a pretty reasonably priced printer. It just doesn't have a couple of like little doohickeys, little features that the X1C or X series has. Like that's their flagship, is the X1. The P1 has pretty much all the same, like it'll print just as fast and do all that stuff. So if you're looking at printers, like A1 is not enclosed, P1 is enclosed, but it's missing like LiDAR, a couple features that may or may not be particularly that important. And then the X is like it has everything kind of thing. The thing that I really like about the bamboo is you can print multiple colors and like actually go into your slicing software and like paint things. So like, and technically I guess you can print up to like 16 different colors at once, kind of. It switches them, but while it's printing, it's switching, and you don't have to like switch filaments. It's all automatic. Most people there's a AMS, automatic, I don't know what that means, but you can have like 4 spools of either different different filament, or even the same one, whatever, if you just don't want to run out and print a lot of things. But you can like paint and do it. I don't know. It's really, look into it. It's pretty cool if you're interested in that. I just use for my designs. I started out with Fusion 360. That is a really complicated program in some senses. There's a lot going on with that. It's kind of like saying, I'm just going to learn how to do Photoshop. There's a lot going on. And so there's slightly simpler ones. If you really want super simple, Tinkercad is a decent way to go, but it's super limited. It's easy to use, but it's got a lot of limitations. But it can kind of get you started if you've never done 3D modeling. Fusion is pretty good, but it's kind of difficult. It's like a little bit more professional level, let's say. There's other ones too that are kind of, I'd say, more pros, use. But in the middle, there's Shaper 3D, which is pretty expensive, but it's got a lot of the things that Fusion has, but it makes it kind of simpler, and you can also do it on an iPad. So I've been kind of trying to learn Shaper 3D. I don't know. I haven't paid for it yet, though. It's like $20 a month, which is pretty expensive. You can get a free version of Fusion if you're just doing it for yourself. This is another problem, is I kind of am using this for commercial purposes, and they don't really want you to do that with Fusion unless you pay $500 a year. So I don't know. It's tough. And then I just use the Chidu Box Basic for slicing. Fusion's pretty good, and it has certain better things, like compared to Shaper 3D. It is a full functioning, and like I said, it's really professional level. Fusion's a good one. If you can learn that and not pay for anything, I would probably just recommend using Fusion. All right, let's get to casting, guys. I've been talking for like half an hour or more. All right, so we're gonna go overhead. So first things first, let's just run these guys first, and then we'll do the kind of experiment a little bit later. Oh, and actually, one other thing, and I'm not going to go into explaining this or tell you what's going on exactly until I've tried it. But one of the big drawbacks I kind of forgot to mention this about, like drawbacks to resin printing. I would say the biggest drawback to resin printing is not only do you have to clean the prints, right? I think I can show you an example. So before we start casting, this is kind of important. I want to share this. This has been the biggest drawback for me. This is a little bit of alcohol that I use to just kind of wash them off, like a final wash. You can see this used to be dead clear alcohol. And the more prints that you like wash off, like again, the way this thing works is it's going to create, a hardened model. Like it's done, but it's going to be dripping with resin that's uncured. All right, so you have to wash all that stuff off before you give it the final cure. You have to either put it in the sun or use like one of the curing stations things with UV lights. But you have to get all that excess uncured resin off, and so you're washing it in alcohol. And there are some resins that are water washable. I'm going to air quote this. Technically, you can just wash it off with water, but the thing is about it doesn't matter if you're using water or alcohol to clean these things. The problem is, what do you do when it's saturated with a bunch of, what ends up happening is there's a bunch of uncured resin particles in your alcohol. Now, you can't dispose of it until you've cured the resin stuff in there. You can't just dump it down the drain or do anything. Like, you have to do something with this stuff. And so even if you buy the water washable UV resin for 3D printing, you can't just wash the thing off in the sink. That stuff is toxic. The uncured resin is toxic. You can't just dump it down the sink. So no matter what you're using, and that's why I air quote water washable, because you still have kind of the same problem. It's just, water's generally going to be free for most people, but I find it doesn't really work as well for the most part. It definitely takes longer, but you still have to deal with that messed up, cleaner, let's say. And I like alcohol better because it actually is a solvent. It dissolves the resin, whereas water, you need to just wash it. It's just washing it off. It's not actually a solvent of any kind. So you have to dispose of it, and you're either going to be paying a lot of money for alcohol, and the way that you can dispose of it is you can just basically set this stuff out in the sun for like a day, or just stick it in your curing station for like 30 minutes, and then kind of let it settle. All that junk will settle to the bottom, and then you can kind of pour off the top with your alcohol and kind of reuse it, but it's not a very perfect solution. So what I'm trying to do is come up with a pump system that like pushes it through filters. I don't know how well this is going to work in the end, but if I can get something like that to work where I don't have to take time off, because it takes a lot of time to deal with this alcohol stuff, with all that stuff. Like I said, you got to set it out in the sun and do this, and then wait for it to settle and do. There's just a lot of time going on where you're cleaning things. And so what I want to do is just set up, there's a couple people that have set up filter systems where it's like pumping it through the water filters, like the home water filter systems. I don't know exactly how well this is going to work. One of my issues is I use dyes. I add dyes to the resin, which makes it, not only is there uncured resin, but there's dyes. But even if you buy a dyed, a colored resin, you can buy like red. The problem is there's only so many colors, and some of the, there's not very many at all. Most of them are transparent. But if you're buying resin that says red, there's dye in it. That's the only way to make it colored, right? And so I'm adding other types of dyes. I don't know exactly what they use for their formulas. I'm just using, for the most part, I'm using Alumilite dyes in this stuff. But then you have dye plus uncured resin in this alcohol vat. So we'll have to see how these filters work, dealing with that problem. All right, enough to talk about this stuff. Let's see here. Yeah, Onshape. The problem is Onshape there was a really big drawback. And plasticity, I don't know. It's tough. I looked at a lot of them. There's a lot of problems. Some of them are price related. All right, so first thing we're going to do, we're going to cast these guys in PVC pipes. So the first thing we need to do, I haven't done it yet, is I need to spray mold release on these guys. So I'm just going to do it off camera back here. I recommend, like, these are sitting out, right, on my casting desk here. Like, I don't want to sit here and spray mold release anywhere near these things, because if it gets on there, you're going to have adhesion issues. So I'm going to go kind of behind the camera, aim it another way, and spray these pipes real quick. Just keep in mind, I mean, you're spraying this stuff and it kind of gets aerosolized and it's just hanging out in the air. So really, I would rather go outside, like leave the shop entirely, but I'm not walking all the way to the front of the shop, especially on a stream. So I just kind of aim it the other way and hope for the best. I didn't get the bottoms. And I like to spray from the top and the bottom. I haven't done this for a little while. The silicone molds make this, I don't have to do this, basically. That's one of the big reasons why I started using the silicone molds for pen blanks. Just because I don't have to do it, it's kind of a hassle a little bit, you know, it's just an extra step. But you're also, depending on how many of these things you're making and doing, like if you sell pen blanks and you're repeatedly using these things, I mean, the mold release, you're just buying cans of it. You're going through it quick. So I thought, well, let me just make a silicone mold. And if all you're doing is like, you know, swirl blanks, you know, just mixing resin together, like you're not doing what you know, 3D prints and all this stuff. Silicone molds are great because I don't use mold release on mine. Some people do. I don't know that it really, I don't know how beneficial it really is on most of these things. We'll have to see. You know, Fred has been around, you know, P-Town Subby. He's been making those vertical pen molds, and you can get these guys, you can get both the PVC pipes and these little stopper things from Turner's Warehouse. Forgot to link to those. I'm gonna go grab a link real quick so that if anybody wants to pick this stuff up, you know where it is, because I know where they are. I don't buy my PVC pipes from them. I usually buy it kind of like bulk a little bit more, but I do buy these are the best stoppers on the planet. These little plugs, whatever. Dang, I'm hungry. Ooh. Forgot to eat. And so they have both the pipes and the plugs are on the same like listing. Just make sure that you pick, you know, if you want, because they have clear PVC as well as the white. The white's significantly cheaper, but I think for a lot of you guys, you're probably going to want the clear. It just makes things a little bit easier, and for certain things you really need to be able to see in there. So I kind of recommend just, you know, pay the money and get the clear ones. It's going to be a better option for you. So here's a link to that on Turner's Warehouse. Yeah, I know. I don't know. Yeah, I've seen like, it's really tough, you know, like, well, actually, here's the big thing. I'm just kind of, all my plugs are kind of dirty, so I'm just spraying them, you know, blowing them off. Here's the big thing. I find that epoxies definitely are harder on silicone. So if you're using Amazing Clear Cast, your molds are not going to last as long. And I think it's two reasons. I think that the chemical makeup is part of the issue. I don't know for sure. I'm not a chemist and all that, you know, but I believe, you know, there's definitely a different chemistry. And I think that the chemistry could possibly be part of the culprit. the other thing is, most of your resin, oh, there's junk in there. Most of your casting resins heat up to a pretty high temperature, especially like your bar top epoxies, which, you know, Amazing Clear Cast is basically a bar top epoxy. It gets pretty hot when it's curing. And so Alumilite Clear Slow, which is the one that I use, and I would actually even argue that Alumilite Clear, the regular version, the 5 to 7 minute working time, I would imagine it reaches a higher temp. And so that's, I'm going to switch to this view so you're not just staring at nothing. I can like talk to you guys. Alumilite Clear Slow, it doesn't reach as high a temperature when it's going through kind of the curing process. And that's the reason why you can dump gallons of it into a bucket and it's not going to like overheat. It'll cure without cracking and yellowing and doing all that stuff, even at large quantities, large masses of it. You could cast a bowling ball with Alumilite Clear Slow and it'd be fine. You can't do that with Alumilite Clear, the regular set. It's going to reach, it's because it reaches a higher temperature and overheats, and the exothermic reaction runs away basically, and it cracks and doesn't work right. So that's I think probably one of the biggest reasons is the temperature, but I also think that's like epoxies in general, they tend to be harder than urethane, which Alumilite Clear and Clear Slow are urethanes. So I'm thinking there's something to do with the chemical makeup, but I also think that temperature difference when curing is also the part of the problem. Now, one thing that I've learned, and I did it on the stream, make sure that you've plugged all of your things before you start pouring stuff into them. I don't know. Was anybody there when that happened? I forgot to plug one of the tubes, and I'm like pouring resin in, and I'm like, why isn't it filling up? And then I have a pool of resin on my work table. So I always double check now just to make sure. Now, one other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to blow these things off just because they've been sitting on this desk. I don't know. There's probably like glitter pieces. And, oh, that didn't help. Blew it right out of my hand. And in fact, I think I'm going to go grab something to stick these in, because I'm going to, blowing them off and then sticking them in the same spot is really not helpful. I need to get something that's not dusty or particly. I'm going to grab, I have a little bucket, a little plastic tub. That'll do nicely. That way I'm not totally wasting my time. There's a little bit of junk on. One of the problems is when I had to peel that magnet thing off my build plate, I did it here and I never really cleaned up. So there's little chunks of stuff getting on here. One way to kind of quickly, this is just a random tip. One way to really quickly clean up a silicone mat is to just literally pour a layer of resin on top of it and let it cure, and then you can just kind of rip it all off, and hopefully it should pull all of the little spots and junk that's on it, dirt, you know. Hope that's not too loud. Is that really loud? Mark remembers that. I was like, oh man, I've never done that before. I'm going to put the mic on mute real quick while I do this so that you guys don't have to listen to this air hose thing. It's pretty loud. Okay, now we're good. These ones are looking pretty good. I'll put those in there too, I think. Yeah, okay. All right, so we got our tubes ready. We got our models ready. I forgot to tell you guys, if anybody wants to get in on the colors, it's maybe a little bit late now. But if you want to super chat, I'll get a color in if you want to pick a color. Pretty much you can do anything with these. That's why I like them. I'm thinking that we'll go for maybe like an umbra kind of a deal, like where it's like a gradient type of thing. And the way that I do these is I'm going to pour the resin in the tube first and then push the thing down in. I think that's really important for keeping air bubbles and stuff trapped. I think it would work. Some people do this where they just kind of stick the things in the tube and pour the resin on, but it's going to be a little bit of a slower process because it's going to have to work its way down in there. And I think you're better off just pouring your resin in the tube. The other thing is you get a little bit of movement, some resin action, kind of swirling things up and moving those colors around if you're doing multiples. So either way will work, but you're more likely to trap air if you pour resin on top of like a hole. And especially with these ones, I put a hole in the middle, and this is another thing that I'm actually kind of thinking I might get rid of. I don't know yet, but the problem is for people that are making custom pens, that's going to not be awesome to have that in the middle. Like number one, an open area that goes all the way through. That's not good. Actually, well, you're going to put resin in there, sorry. But I think it would be better if it didn't have that. The question is, how well are they going to cast? Because having that hole in the middle really makes these things go in a lot easier. You're just not displacing as much resin as you push it down in there. So you have to be a little bit careful about your timing on things, because these ones go pretty quick, but depending on what you're shoving down in the tube, it may take quite a while for you to be able to get it, all the way sunk in. So if you're really, really late on, if you wait too long, your resin, the other problem is the resin's going to get thicker and thicker as it, starts to kind of cure. So, you kind of need to balance it, because if you have multiple colors and you pour it really quick, it's going to be thin and this will go in easier, but you're going to, blend up all of your resin. It's going to bleed together. Whoa, look at all that. Well, you get one color. So do you want black or interference green? Color shifting red tone. Color shifting. Scarlet. Let's see. I do have some samples of color shifting powders. I don't know if it's actually enough to work. I got a couple from Eye Candy a while ago. Somewhere. Typically, I don't know, it's been really hard to find a good color shifting thing. I like the blue to purple because it does what I want. Some of these like chameleon and color shifting things, honestly, they don't really look that good for like in like a big mass. They're really meant to be like an automotive paint put on a thin layer with a just a sprayed layer with like black behind it. So it's kind of tough, but we're gonna try this Haiku. It's called Haiku from Eye Candy. It looks like it's like a red. I don't know. That might be kind of. Hold on. Let me look and see what this thing's. And I think what I'm going to do is add red dye to that. Because you can also, that's the problem, is you kind of need to do a lot of testing to figure out, and trying different things to figure out. So this is like it's like a Technically, I don't think it's red. But if we add red dye to it, it might work pretty good. Let's see here. It doesn't even say. Wait. No, I don't want to sign up for your newsletter. They don't really tell you what color. I mean, I see a picture. It's got kind of like a purple, reddish. Let's just add some red dye to this, see what happens. I don't know. Let's do it. Blurple. Let's see here. So, yeah, I might need black. So we can go with black. Oh, or do you want me to do like, these are going to be some crazy blanks. You mean like black, like interference green with black dye in it? Is that what we were talking about? Sorry, I didn't understand that. I wasn't thinking. And then Steve, do you still want scarlet? Because we are going to do this kind of reddish color shift. So I'll let you, if you want to change or do anything different. Colors. We're kind of doing that. So if you want to try something different, we're already kind of doing this. So I don't want to like short anybody on their super chat. So if you want to pick a different color, let me know. Let's see. So we got, how many do we have here? We got black with interference green. We got scarlet color shift, blurple, and then dark purple opaque. Nice. CJ, do I have a honeycomb blank file for... No, I don't have those yet. I'm kind of testing things out. Like I said, if I can get... Again, these have a hole in them. And these are great. If all you're doing is kit pens, then this is... I mean, this is fine. I haven't added the round one yet. To be honest, guys, I actually... a while back... I was having Nikki create the models for me. I had made honeycomb originally, just like a square one, and I actually did this one too. But I was working with her, and I liked the idea of trying to get honeycombs all the way, where like the hexagons are all the way around. And she made a model for me, but I was having so much difficulty getting them to not have a bunch of air bubbles in them that I just threw it out. I was like, this sucks. It's just not fun to cast. Now, another problem is then I realized that Hobble Creek already had that. So I don't know. I kind of backed out of those. But I am going to move on. So I do sell a honeybee is the blank that it's the name of the blank. So it's like your yellow or like a gold with black honeycomb. But they're square right now, and there's effectively no difference between this round one and a square one. The only difference is there's no corners on it. It's the same exact print. So for me, it's easier to cast something, vertically in a tube. There's less cutting and stuff. And really for the turner, you don't have to knock corners off. So it's not as much waste and wasted time. So eventually I'm probably going to move towards these for my own blanks, for like actual pen blanks. But I do think that I'm probably going to add this model. I'm just not entirely sure. I haven't done it yet because I'm either going to just do this one with the hole, or it's probably going to be a set with this one and then one that doesn't have a hole if you wanted to make one for like a kitless pen, or just have one that doesn't have a hole in the middle of it. The problem is I don't know how well that's really going to work in reality when you're casting it. It's going to have it's going to be much harder to get it down in, and it may just be as problematic as that one that we were trying earlier. So soon I should have that. Gold, that's a good call. I like that. Yeah, let's do that. Well, and I think I tried adding black to interference green because we talked about this a while ago, and I think honestly, I don't think it's awesome. Let me do a test real quick because I can't remember. It was a while ago now. We can just kind of put some resin in a cup, add some interference green, and then black dye, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm pretty sure that it was like not awesome. Let's do that real quick first. And I don't need to wait for it to cure. It's just, let's see what it looks like liquid. It should, it's going to be about the same as after it cures. So let's do a little bit of a test. I need a drink real quick, guys. I've been talking. I'm like super into 3D printing, so that's why I thought I'd do a little bit of a talk about it today. It helps to put the bottle to your lips before you tilt it. Pro tip. Okay, so let's see here. Go to the Sony cam. So let's, I just have a little, I really recommend getting these little, some sort of, there's different ones, but these are just, you can look them up on Amazon. They're condiment cups. And you can get like a bunch, like 500 or something for not much. So let's just throw a little bit of, yeah, I will mix it and let it cure. I don't need it to cure to make a decision. We could basically what I was saying is I could just add the interference powder and the black dye to just part A. But if you're going to add part A, you may as well just do it, I'm going to add 15 grams of part A. It's harder to sneak up when your bottle is full. Close enough. Oh, we got it actually dead on. Perfect. So 15 grams of that. And so just to let you guys know, if that, I was talking about that filtration system for the alcohol, if that works, if I'm happy with it, it's going to take a while to find out, over time. But if that system works, then I've really kind of stopped making like normal videos. It's just, they take so much time and the editing and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just really bogged down with, family things going on and whatever. So, however, if that thing works extremely well, I think I may come out of retirement to kind of explain that. And for the most part, I'm not going to go through, like if I do a video on it, it's probably going to be fairly short because I didn't come up with the idea. There's other people that have done it. In fact, I'm going to drop a link for you guys, hopefully. If you want to look into this system, go check it out. And if you want to set it up, the more of us that actually try this, the better. Like as far as I know, there's 2 people that have done this system, and that's why I hadn't done it yet, because there was one guy a couple of years ago that I saw, but I don't know. I was like, I'm not sure how well does it work over time, kind of thing, But then a guy that's an industrial designer also did a video on it. And that kind of got me like to the point where I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's worth trying, if at least 2 people are doing it. But I hadn't seen anybody else doing this. So here's a video. This is the first guy that came up with this idea, at least, or the first guy that I saw that did it. And then this is the industrial designer guy. He made a couple modifications. But for the most part, they're both the same. So if you want to try this out, again, even if I do a video, I'm not going to be like, here's how you assemble everything. I'm going to be like, go watch these guys' videos because I don't want to explain it all. And then you let me know. But I do actually have a couple of things that I'm going to adjust, I think, slightly. And I think the difference for me is I don't know what kind of stuff those guys are printing. And I would imagine they're probably not using Alumilite dye. So like my results, I think it could be a valuable video for like the type of people that are that watch my videos. If you're a pen turner and want to get into this stuff, I think my experience might be a little bit more useful to someone. So it's just going to be like I tried it. Here's what I think. If it doesn't work, or if I find that I don't really feel like it's a good idea, I'm not doing a video. I'll just let you guys know on the stream that I don't think this is great. Okay, so we got that mixed up. What are we doing here? We're putting some interference green. Sorry, I had to come back to what's happening. That's red. Interference green. And you could use the Ghost or whatever. I'm just used to the Pearl-X ones, so I just use those. There's a little bit of a difference between the Pearl-X and the eye candy, I feel. In the end, I don't know if it really matters, the end result, but they are slightly different powder. The one thing I will say is the eye candy version is a lot less clumpy, but I don't know that it gives exactly the same effect. So, and this, these interference powders are kind of integral to my abalone and opal. So I don't really want to mess around with that formula. I mean, I could do tests and all that stuff, but it ain't broke. I would say that I feel like these, because I have used the eye candy ones also, I feel like these have a little bit more pearl. It might be a mental thing, because I think I have some eye candy ones actually on hand. Ghost, yeah, actually I have Ghost Green. I don't know. It's not going to really come through, but the powders look a little bit different. It's not going to show up on the camera. It's just a slightly different looking powder. And I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit different, so I didn't really want to change my formula, let's say, with those, because I really like my abalone blanks the way they are. That being said, I don't think that there's any problem. Like the eye candy, it's not like the eye candy one doesn't work. It's just that I have a very specific, I'm very happy with the results that I get pouring those blanks using the Pearl-X one. And I just don't really want to change my formula because I don't want it to be at all different. But lots of people do that same type of thing with the Ghost from eye candy, and they look fine. They're just, I don't know if, I don't want to change anything. Partly because I like the way they look, partly because my customers expect something. I don't want to change the formula on them in the middle. All right, so we got our green, our interference green, and I added quite a bit, right? So it's kind of like that pearly. I don't know if you guys can see that really extremely well. That's what it looks like, kind of whitish with a kind of a green hue to it. And this is just Alumilite black dye. So I'm just going to add one drop and see how that does. I think I remember it just wasn't. The thing is, like, you need black next to it, but mixing it in, I want to say it just kind of looked not so awesome. Well, it's not terrible. I don't know. Not. It really darkens it. It's just not, I don't know. Like I don't know. That's not my favorite thing. It's not like bright green. It's not popping the green like it would in my, like if you had interference green next to black. Like in the in my dark energy blanks. Trying to get an example for you guys to look at. It's like you need the light. It needs to be a layered thing, not just like right next to it. And so when you have that black kind of background, it kind of pops out a little bit and makes it more vibrant. I mean, obviously that's just not what's happening in this cup. Whoa, I almost spilled it. So, I don't know. Up to you. Yeah, it's kind of army green. I don't know. It's not really awesome, I don't think. Well, what about just like lime green? I mean, how about, you know, like that? I was making some, oh, by the way, I dropped a new blank Joker. You can see I was pouring them. So, I mean, that's a pretty good green too, I think. I don't know. We might really want to put, I think, okay, so I think a better option would maybe to just go with interference green, maybe, and then black too, because we might need a little bit of black to pop this. I don't know. We can just add a little bit of black to the mix, see what happens. Yeah, like I said, it sounded cool. Like I was like, oh yeah, let me try this, and then I did it, and I was like, I don't know, really not what I was hoping for. I'll just kind of set that aside. Let that cure. Okay, so let me get my little book of notes and things out. This is taking forever, guys. Sorry. If you came to see casting, you're like, oh my God, is he still talking? I hear you. I hear you. Okay, so today is 2/3. And we're doing 3D prints. So number 1, we're doing wavy. And if you, so I should probably mention that I didn't put any of this stuff in the show notes. If you want, so I do sell the model, not physical objects, but if you want to, if you have a 3D printer and you want the files to print, I have these guys. I have square honeycomb. I got a lot of them actually, but I've got a bunch of these 3D prints. So right now this is the honeycomb. It's just a square one. You just drop it into it like a single, like Jake's silicone single. And for anybody, this is set up for a 7/8 slot, but you can actually go in and kind of alter the settings and make it 3/4, you know, just shrink it a bit, and it'll fit into a 3/4 inch slot. You might have to kind of play around with that. I don't have like settings or anything, but you can alter stuff within the slicing software. And I got a bunch of other ones too on my website. So there's just like a section called 3D print files. So if you're interested, like I said, getting into this stuff and looking for cool stuff to make, I got all those. And again, it's a digital download. It's just the file that you would use to print these things. And so these ones are called the wavy, I think it's called wavy or something like that. I know that's the file name. Let's see, what do I call them? Yeah, waves 3D print. And I also have boxes where you can like actually pour resin into the 3D printed object. I got to show you guys that for anybody that hasn't seen them. They're pretty cool. You do need to kind of make sure that you're getting good prints because they need to hold the resin, and if you got holes and stuff in the side, so just be aware of that. You know, I think it's obvious, but and I showed you guys those a little bit earlier with the stars and stuff. But I got a really cool spider web one. That one was really popular. This one's like bubbles. Some of these get a little tricky because you got to like use like a needle to fill some of these holes, but this one in particular. But you know, something like this, you just pour your resin in and you get stars. I've got a kind of an American flag type of set that has a bunch of them. We got hearts, we got clover. Excuse me. It's a sign I'm talking too much. All kinds of stuff. So number 1, we're doing the wavies. These, I have no clue how much resin this is going to take. Each one takes, I want to say like 80. 80 grams? That seems like a lot. Let me look up some stuff here real quick. Should have thought about this a little bit earlier. Okay, so 10, like 45 for the Yankees. Yeah, so that's probably about right. So like we're looking at like maybe 40 to 45 grams of resin per tube. Let's just go with 45 times. So we're doing 10 tubes, 45 grams. So we're doing 450 grams total is what we're going to mix up. And then we got so many colors. This is going to be so crazy. Oh, you're welcome, man. Yeah, I know there's a lot of stuff it took me a long time to kind of, and I really am not at all an expert on this stuff. There are just certain things that I've found out. And it's really hard because there's almost nobody doing this for pen turning, it doesn't even have to be for pen turning, just printing something and then recasting it. There's not, I don't know too many people. I know that Jake does it, but it's not like he's using an FDM printer, number one, and he has no experience, and he's not showing you how to do stuff in any of the videos that I've seen. There's just very few resources out there for this type of use of 3D printing. Tons of people make little creatures and toys and all kinds of stuff, but so I'm happy to kind of help out if I can, point you in the right direction. I'm still learning as I go, though, all right, so we got, let's see here, I got to go back here and find all these colors. We're doing, I'm not sure what the green one is. We're doing Haiku, Eye Candy, and we're going to add some red dye to that and see what happens. We're going to do, we had gold with that. We've got Blurple. We've got, let's see here, dark purple. So when you say dark purple opaque, Tim, are you talking like a dye type pigment, like a what is it called? Divine pigments? Or are you just going for like, I'm guessing that like not a pearl? Not like a mica? I don't even know how dark that actually is, the sangria. I can kind of custom mix one real quick. That might be kind of interesting for you guys to watch. See how it's done. So dark purple, I'm just going to write what you said. And I'll explain later just so I know. What else we got? Is that it? Oh, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Wait, what did I... Oh, yeah, and then the green. What are we doing with the green? I'll make the final call. Okay, so we're going to add a little bit of black, tiny bit of black. Just, I don't know how that's... Well, we kind of need... Well, you don't need that. When I do the blurple, I just go with... I add some violet dye. So like blurple is going to be taken care of. That kind of covers the blue. That's why I like that specific. I'm telling you, there are 1,000 chameleon powders, but to figure out how to really pop them and how to make them work for this type of thing can be a little bit difficult. And most of the ones that I've tried, I'm like, that's whatever. But the blurple, the blue to purple that I sell, it just, you know, you can either do it without any dye in it, and it has that aurora effect where you can kind of add maybe some black swirls and that'll kind of pop things a little bit, or don't add any black and you get like an aurora effect, or you add the violet dye to it and it just, it's awesome. So let's see, Tim, I was thinking of mica powder. Oh, okay. Okay. No, to be honest, I don't know that I've ever tried that. That's cool. Let's try it. So I got one of my favorites is ultraviolet from P-Town. It's a really good dark. Like on its own, it's pretty good as like a darker mica. Let's add some white and see what happens. I don't know. I've never really, the problem is when you add like an opaque dye to a mica, you know, too much and it's not going to really show up. So we'll kind of sneak up on that and kind of take a look at it. We've got a lot of colors though, so I got to kind of think about how I'm doing this so we don't mess things up. Oh, your current printer? Yeah. Well, okay, so one other thing that you could do with those box prints is actually just, well, yeah, I think that would work. I think you could print, like, shrink it down. I don't know. I'm not saying that I really recommend doing this. I don't know if it's really worth it. But technically, if you had these and you were having an issue or something like that, I think you could maybe kind of shrink the dimensions slightly. And hopefully it wouldn't too bad. You know, if you shrink every dimension, it's just going to equally shrink. You can also just shrink like the X or Y or Z. So you can change those types of things in the slicing software. So you might have to kind of play with that and see what the end result is. If you're just doing like the bubbles or something like that, like whatever, it doesn't matter if it's really kind of messed up. You know, changed the shape. It's like oblong now maybe or something. But if you're doing certain things, it may totally screw up the print. But you can maybe print it out and just stick it in one of these, and then, you know, or kind of make like your own. One thing that I do honestly is just put tape around, because like even my printing is not. Sometimes you get a little leak. You know, honestly, I'm not excellent at 3D printing. And another problem is it's with resin printing, really, technically everybody else that does resin printing is going to kind of tell you, like for different types of things, they're going to tell you to orient them on an angle. You're going to get better printing if you do that with a resin printer. Printing a box totally flat, you're going to probably see layer lines and some stuff. So, you know, and actually with square box things like that, you actually kind of want to technically tilt it up and angle it on its kind of side. The problem is when you do that, you have to put a bunch of like supports and do all that kind of stuff, which I've slightly dabbled in recently, but it can make things harder. So I understand that, you know, so all I do is just put packing tape all the way around it, and it seems to work pretty good. So black. Tiny amount of black. We'll just add some like kind of little black strings here and there. And then we're going to go with a green. Let's see. Let's just go with, like I said, like a bright green from like the Joker kind of deal. We'll go with a spring. Here, let's, just so we're not just throwing in a random mica powder that you get, you know, you've already seen what this looks like, right? So that's not helping anybody. Let's do something a little bit different. Let's add spring green. Okay. We'll go with spring green mica powder, and we'll add a little bit of UFO to it and see what happens. How about that? This is a really complicated pour, so I'm going to need to really kind of focus. Spring green and UFO. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main ones plus a little bit. So we're going to go with like, I don't know, 20. I'm just 20 grams of spring green, or not spring green. 20 grams of the black is what we're going to split off. 45 divided by, we're looking at, wait, 450. That's like 90. 450 minus 20 divided by 5. All right, so we're looking at like 86 grams for each one of these guys. Does that add up times, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 20. Nice. Okay. We're gonna have to, the only problem is we're gonna have to add, I'm gonna say like 450. So what I'm gonna actually mix in the cup, so these are like really small cups, it's 86 grams per color. And the problem is, in fact, I'm gonna go with this one. The problem is I don't want to just leave 86 grams in this main mixing cup. That's not, it's gonna take forever for it to heat up to the same temperature as the other 86 grams, which are gonna be like 40 in these small cups. When you have very small amounts, it's better to put it in a much smaller cup so that it's a little bit more kind of like massive. So it's not just like a very thin spread out layer. That's going to take forever for it to heat up and start to kind of cure. So we want to try and kind of keep everything the same. So what I'm going to do is we're going to get all the colors. We're going to dump it out of this cup. We're not going to use this to mix any colors in, just to mix all the resin at once. So what I want to do, the thing is, you're going to leave a bunch of stuff on the cup wall, wall in the cup. So I'm going to add, I would be pouring 225 grams of part A and part B to make 450. I'm going to add, we're going to go with like we're going to go with 240 times 2 instead. I don't know how much that extra that is. It's 15 grams extra, so 30 total. So we're mixing up 480 grams total. Now I'm going to get some stuff ready before we go on, because this one's, like I said, this one's going to be a little bit kind of crazy. Let's see, 86. So I'm going to put in, we're going to go with like a 1/4 teaspoon of the gold, 1/4 teaspoon of haiku. Yeah, so I think a 1/4 teaspoon of all these things. 80. I think that'll be good. Oh, okay, so this one's going to be ultraviolet plus white dye. I don't know how that's going to turn out. Black, we're just doing, oh, that's probably way too much. I'm just going to add 2 drops of black dye, and then the spring green and UFO, we're going to go with a 1/4. An 1/8 teaspoon of each, maybe? I don't know. Now, I think, just to make sure, I'm going to go with a 1/4 teaspoon of spring green, and then we'll just kind of add a little bit of the UFO. The problem with the UFO is you got to add some alcohol or do something to it to make it easier to work with. And luckily, I have another small little kind of cup thing, mixing cup, even smaller, that we can kind of put the UFO in and mix up a solution of it. And then we'll just add however much we get, kind of thing. So I've put a 1/4 teaspoon in. I don't plan on using it all necessarily. And then we need to go with some alcohol. So this is an eye candy product. If you didn't see the last time we used this, problem is this stuff like never mixes in. if you just put the powder in. So what I do is add a little bit of denatured alcohol, and that really, really makes a huge difference. But you really need to kind of like sneak up on how much alcohol you're putting in, otherwise it's going to be just a runny mess. And it literally doesn't take much. Like drops kind of thing. Trying to think of like how to explain the consistency. This toothpick idea is not really. I need a flat. Oh, I do have a flat stick somewhere. Here we go. Yeah, I need a little bit more denatured alcohol. So what this does is it's just making it like usable. It'll like mix in very well. I'm getting this stuff all over the place though. The only problem with this cup is there's like little tabs I keep getting stuck on. Sorry, I'm doing this somewhere else because otherwise this stuff's gonna get everywhere. Okay, so this cup kind of sucks. This is not a good mixing cup. Not at all. Note for the future. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be super awesome. I think I needed to do more possibly, but well, I'm almost certain that that's not going to work. It's not going to do enough. So we're going to put in this mixing cup, we're going to put a half teaspoon of the UFO green. I got to mix it more. Oh, that's better, a little bit. Oh man, this stuff's, ugh. You know what? I'm totally done with this stupid mixing cup. Start over. Done with it. You don't get to play then. We're going to go with a cup that is not going to cause me to get pissed off. All right. Much better. Okay. I'm just going to use, I just added a lot more to begin with. I'm really glad that I didn't decide to get this ready in the middle of the resin setting up. So definitely do this step beforehand. And there's a couple other colors that work this way. The Firebird Red. Oh, I think I might have added too much. Yeah. That's okay, whatever. But I want to make sure that I'm getting all these little clumpies. Taken care of. All right, so that ought to be good. Firebird Red, and I think there's like one more color, maybe a yellow or something. I don't know what it's like. It's a powdered fluorescent pigment. So it's almost like, what I really feel like this is basically, I think it's like this almost. It's like the fluorescent dye without the vehicle, the thing that makes this liquid. I don't know. I don't know if that's how it's made necessarily, but it would make sense. But it really just does not want to mix in with resin. It just, like, no matter how long you mix it, it's just not going to mix in properly. Okay, so we need some spring green, 1/4 teaspoon of that. And then I'm going to mix these, dump that in basically as well. But I want to kind of sneak up on that. So I'm not going to do it yet. All right, sorry, I haven't been looking at the thing. Yeah, what kind of printer do you have, Mark? Airwolf Axiom. Oh, wow. That's expensive, Mark. Yeah, the bamboo, I don't know, like I said, I've seen people complain about certain things about it that, you know, but I've also seen a lot of people that are not being, and one of the arguments is always that, oh, these people are just getting paid for reviews. There's a ton of people that just bought it out of their own pocket and they're like, this is the best printer I've ever even used. So I don't know, but the reality is, I mean, as long as you get a reasonably, decent printer, if you get a Prusa, I don't know, the Chitty line looks pretty decent. I'd say that's a pretty close competitor to your Bamboos. Creality. So last week we were talking about this, and I didn't realize Creality, the K1, that is a really tough call. Bamboo versus the Creality K1. That one, I don't know. That one's a pretty nice looking printer also. It's got pretty much, well, it's got many of the same features that the Bamboo does, but you don't have the, kind of proprietary issue with Bamboo. My biggest thing is I fall into the category of I do not want to tinker with printers. Like, I don't have a problem paying a little bit more. The beauty of if you're kind of locked into a specific, resin or filament style and maybe even slicer, and if people have packaged something up, and not, this isn't always the case, but typically if the company's kind of got a control over what the material is, then like, settings are not that hard. Like, you don't have to sit there and mess around as much. All right, I'm not saying this is like a foolproof kind of thing, but you generally don't have to spend as much time kind of messing around, like with like this, at least the starting point. Like, that's generally typically kind of true. And that's the problem is you don't have as much room for it's kind of like Android versus Apple. Like, Apple gives you 85% of anything that you've ever wanted to do, and it's fairly simple usually. Whereas like Android, you have the ability to do whatever you want with that thing, but it's probably not going to be as easy. There's more fiddling with things. If you decided, having the freedom makes it, there's like responsibility with that a little bit kind of thing. So that's the general idea. That's how it's supposed to work. Okay. And that's kind of what I like about the Bamboo one. There's actually a new resin printer company that I'm like drooling over, but it's a proprietary thing, which like I said, I like the idea, let's say. I'm just not certain that you're still going to have to mess around with stuff, like, you can't get around it. Like, it's not just you can't just think and it's going to print perfect for you. But I don't know, like I said, that's what I want. I don't want to mess with the printer. I've never bought a kit either. No thanks. I don't want to spend my time putting a printer together. I want to print things. Okay, so we got gold. How many do we have here? One. Oh, that's 2 cups. We need a black, which I'm going to get a smaller cup for. That's for black. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then blurple. And I need red dye for this one. I need black dye for, where did my other little cup go? Oops. Black dye for that one. Red dye for that one. And blurple. Okay. Yeah, Apple is Bamboo. So I mean, really, I think that's a pretty good way to do it, because there's people that can't stand Apple. If you hate Apple and you're like, I'm all about Android, I don't know if you want the Bamboo. Like, I think that's a pretty simple way of looking at things. It's an ecosystem. You're buying into this ecosystem, and they don't really want you. One of the drawbacks, I would actually say the biggest drawback, I think, to the Bamboo is if something breaks, you pretty much have to buy their own product, or like replacement products. Like that would be the biggest difference, I think. And that kind of sucks too. But I don't know. I like easy. If it can be easy, I'm all about it. I don't care if it costs a little bit more money. If it can save me some time. The problem, though, is, and this is, I really want to make sure I'm underlining this. That sounds great. I don't want to sell you on a bamboo thinking that it's going to be perfect, because the reality sometimes isn't exactly the same as, you know, what they're selling you. And right now there is some problem. I don't know if anybody knows what the issue is. Let me know. Something with a cable or I thought that was with the A1 though. Oh, yeah, Firebird Red, I think is, let me just pull it out and make sure that that's, yeah, Firebird Red is the other one. But there's one other one also. I think it's like a yellow. I looked at this last week and I totally forgot again. I'm actually already in the iCandy website, so I'm gonna look at, hopefully they have them kind of similar. UFO green. Oh, there might be a few of them actually. Oh, there's actually quite a few. So sorry guys, I didn't realize this. There's Arc Orange, Cosmic Red, Firebird Red, Magma Magenta, Blaze Orange, Electric Blue, Flamingo Red, Plastic Pink. I don't believe that these are all the same type of thing. Saturn Yellow, I'm certain that, I don't know if these other ones necessarily are the same type of powder thing. Electric Blue looks like it though. So I don't know. Some of them maybe, some of them may not be, but I know definitely Firebird Red, and I'm almost 100% certain Saturn Yellow falls into the same category, where you're really going to want to like thin it with something or whatever, turn it into a liquid form. I'm going to give this like a quick stir, make sure nothing's clumping too much. The one thing, and I mentioned this last week, the one issue with doing this is you are adding alcohol into this mixture, and that's going to go into your blanks, and I cannot tell you what effect that is going to have. I don't think it's going to be super detrimental. This is not that much alcohol. However, it could alter, you know, it may make it more brittle or less brittle. I don't know. It's going to work fine. It'll cast, it'll harden everything. It's not going to have any major effect on like in general, but it could slightly change the properties, the characteristics of the resin. So I don't recommend, you know, just going willy-nilly. This is one of the reasons why I don't use alcohol inks ever, or as long as I can stay away from it. I do use them sometimes, but I just don't know what the result is going to be, if it's going to have any effect. And for me, again, I have to think of customers. I don't want to sell them blanks that are super brittle. You know, if they're used to a certain thing, I try to keep it within that. A1. Okay, yeah. Where? Yeah. In the A1, I would go for, personally, I don't want the A1. I want an enclosed printer, because at least in the past, this may change because there's a lot of new materials that were not available when I was printing FDM prints for turning blanks. But I liked ABS. It wasn't brittle. So it kind of turned better. The problem is it's kind of a softer, weird heat can kind of mess with it. So I don't know yet. I'd have to see, but I do want to be able to print ABS and ASA. And you really kind of need to have an enclosed printer to get good results with that stuff. I do have, you know, I have a Pulse, and I was printing ABS with the pinstripes, but those things are so small that you didn't have any, like, it didn't curl up or do anything. Those worked fine. Other types of things probably like kind of will not work as well with ABS. It needs to be in a hot environment. And that's what, you know, the enclosure, You can, you know, build one and all that, but again, going back to, I don't want to build enclosures for my printer. I just want to buy a printer that works. So we're going 235, right? Where did my notes go? 240. Just to make sure we get enough in here. Close enough. Oh, there it is. Perfect, spot on. And how much does anybody know how much the A1's cheap? Like, it's only like a few $100, like 2 or 3, I think. Is that right? I honestly, actually, I don't know the price, but it's got to be less than $699, because the P1S is that 240. Let me think here. 3D printing's awesome. Like, you know, that I like all of those things. I wish I had more time to like focus on it. That laser and CNC. I mean, just think about, like, if you're proficient with 3D modeling and you have access and understand how to use and get good results with a laser, a CNC, and a 3D printer, like, man, you can do anything. If you add on top of that the ability to, you know, work with like machinery, you know, tools, saws, and, you know, like a wood shop type atmosphere, add that plus resin, like, you know, and turning, you know, all of those things, man, whew, you can do a lot of cool stuff. Okay, so we got our resin finally. We're gonna get going here now. I think we're gonna have to save the next one. I think we're only gonna get this one done today, because I got a lot of other stuff to do. I didn't realize I've been really talking too much today. I'm gonna put this out there. If anybody has any other questions you can think of that deal with like resin printing or whatever, 3D printing in general, that you think I might, you know, have some thoughts on, start putting those questions, like thinking of them, because I do want to answer any other questions. If you, we've kind of really focused on that today. So, you know, if you think of a question that's, you know, you've been thinking of, I'm not certain that I'll be able to answer them all, but you know, CJ seems like, you know, CJ's got some ideas with what's going on. Mark's got some experience. Anne, you know, like there's other people in the chat too, that can kind of help out, but, yeah, so let me know if you think of something. I got to focus on this casting though right now. Otherwise things are going to go south quick. Okay, so let's get this stuff going here. We need how much? 86 in each one of these guys? Boom, look at that, 86. And I'm going to put some red dye in that one. Let's get this green going because I want to... Six plus, we're going to just do that. See where we're at. Actually, one thing that I do want to try, alcohol, when you, so have you guys seen the, what are those things called? The Petri dish stuff for coasters. And they use alcohol inks and white dye and different stuff. I think it might be kind of interesting just to see what effect adding some alcohol in, when you, like, we've already done this, so we already kind of know, but like when you're doing, you know, like your typical like color swirl kind of blank or whatever, like what does alcohol, I think that it disperses, it thins, it reacts a little bit in the liquid resin, and I wonder if you could get some interesting effects. I know, you know, if you've seen it, there's the Petri dish effect thing. I've tried it. It's very difficult to get usable results for like pen blanks in that. That's looking pretty good. I don't know how much different it really is compared to the standard. Let's just dump all this in here. Go for it. It's a little bit brighter, I think, than just the normal spring green, but you still do have a little bit of pearl going on. Kind of interesting. Kind of a little weird mixture. Okay, we need 86 in this one. And like I said, I think the hardest thing for me, because you can go on YouTube and there's lots of helpful videos, lots of different people doing resin printing, but they're doing it. I would say the majority of people are doing it in a to make a lot of like the figurine type, the tabletop things, the miniatures. There's a ton of people doing. If you're into that, like you're covered. Like they'll tell you how to print for miniatures. But it's hard to find people that have done a lot of stuff and have like really good information for like recasting things like this. So you're kind of extrapolating information that may or may not really pertain to what what I'm doing. That's the tough part, I think, for me. And we need 20 black. Okay, put that aside. We're just going to go like a couple drops of black here. Squeeze. Just need to get some color in there. And we need violet for the blurple. Oh, Jules, you've done the Petri thing? Yeah. It's pretty cool, the way that works. Basically, you're putting drops, and it's weird. It's like the alcohol inks, the colored ones, are kind of lighter, I'm going to say. Lighter, and the alcohol tends to make it kind of dissipate a little bit weird. And then you drop the white dye on top, and that's really not an alcohol ink. I think it's pretty much exactly the same thing as the Alumilite white dye. Every white dye is super heavy, and so it kind of forces its way through. It's kind of similar to the color drop or graffiti blanks is what I call them. I think Chad calls his color drop, where you're letting the kind of dyes kind of sink down through. A little bit different, but it's kind of a cool effect, that Petri thing. But I don't know, you really have to kind of hone in your skills on doing that, and there's a lot of transparency left. So for pen blanks and stuff, I didn't really find it to be particularly awesome. But I only tried it a few times and was never what I would call an expert at the Petri method. Oh, we got to add white dye to this one. Man, we got all kinds of things going on here. Let's do this purple real quick. And again, this is the opaque purple, and we wanted to add a little bit of white dye for Tim. I'm going to be honest, I don't necessarily recommend doing all these colors for this type of thing. I think it's better to do like maybe two, like an umbra effect. These might be cool, but keep in mind we got to push something down into them, so they may end up getting pretty mixed up. We'll have to kind of see how this actually works out in the end. I think for the most part, you're probably better off going like one, maybe two colors, and not really mixing them necessarily. We'll have to see. I haven't really tried something like this exactly. All right, so let's try this purple with white. I'm just going to do a little bit at a time and just kind of see what happens. I don't know. I think you might be thinking of the effect of using a transparent dye and adding white dye to that. That's going to make you an opaque color. Adding white dye to this is probably just going to lighten it. But we'll just have to kind of see. It's definitely not going to darken it. So it's kind of making it just kind of hazy. Muddy, I would actually call that. So, I don't know. I think I'm going to stop there. I don't know that that's really going to give us a super awesome effect. it's just going to continue like kind of lightening, muddying it a little bit. And that's already pretty opaque, so I think we'll stop there. So we kind of know, we kind of got an idea of what that looks like with that test. All right, so this is that haiku from Eye Candy. I don't know. It's kind of has like, I don't know. Like I said, the tough thing is like this stuff is made to go on cars where there's lots of like shapes and different angles like right next to each other. Whereas we're putting this into, and although you're going to have a curvature on the round blank, it just, a lot of those color shift things, they just don't work the same as like on a car. And we don't have a background typically. Now I'm going to add a little bit of red dye to this and just see. That's looking a little better. Kind of like that. I'm going to add another drop. We'll just kind of have to see how this ends up. I don't know. Let's add a drop of, I'm going to add one more drop of red. Number one. And I want to add a little, we're going to do it. I'm going to add a little drop of black to this. Because this one works, this one's a little bit different than Blurple. This has a pigment to it, like a color. Whereas the Blurple is more like two interference colors. Like I actually think the way that works is, yeah, that's looking a little bit better, a little darker. Honestly, we could probably add violet again to this one and get kind of an interesting look. But that's looking a little bit darker now. I don't know. It's got some kind of blues in it and weird stuff. I don't know. Depends on how you look at it. I'm going to do one more drop of red and then we're going to move on. Because I think we're about ready to pour. I don't know. That might be kind of cool. Another thing you can do is just add a ton of the you know, like this one may look really awesome if you just dump like the whole bag in this cup. Sometimes how much really affects how things turn out. Oh yeah, we got to pour. Okay, so let me mix this one up. Yeah, that definitely changes the spring green. And let's see here. So we got to pour. We don't want to fill these up. All right. We want to. Yeah, this is probably going to go way too slow. I should have started at like 85. I can do it a lot faster with my Gatling mold because I can just kind of dump it, you know. Probably missed some of these. It's hard to get the perfect amount in each one. Let's go with this red thing. feel like we poured way too much. I think I did way too much on these. I don't know. Go with a little bit of this black. Back to purple. Oh, these are going to overflow. Shoot. Yeah. Okay, I'm done with that. Let's see here. See what we can get here. And I do like kind of finish filling, pour a little bit more over the top. It's just, I don't really, oh, is that bent? What's going on? I don't recommend, oh, that's going to overflow for sure. Oh, these are going to be weird. I think my PVC pipe is bent. Yeah, this one's totally going to overflow. It's always good to kind of do a test. I really didn't have time to do that today, but do a test so that you can kind of figure out what do I need to fill this to get it to not overflow. Like how much do I need to really add, you know? But it's really difficult to try and get some sort of like a, I don't know, to get your colors all poured and like evenly, let's say, kind of, you know. Like you're just going to kind of have to do what I did, just dump them and see where you're at most of the time. That one actually I did perfect, wherever that one was filled to. That was it. That was the ticket. And if, you know, I may get a little bit, oh, that was a perfect one too. Nice. What else we got here? I'm just gonna top this guy off. Okay. Make sure all my tubes are as far down as possible. I don't know if you can see, but there's like air bubbles. You know, the ones that I really recommend trying to fill, get it as close to perfect without overflowing on the first shot, because the more that you're going to have to fill, the more likely it is to get some bubbles and stuff. And typically, you know, it'll be okay. Like the pressure pot will get rid of bubbles and stuff. The problem is, like in this case, we're putting these in fairly late, I would kind of say, and the resin's not going to be able to move around as much. You know, it's thickening up, and it's not going to really flow too well. So you always have to keep in mind like the timing aspect of this stuff with, you know, trying to get timing and air bubbles and, you know, like there's a few things that you got to kind of put together in your head to get the perfect pour or the best results, I guess. Red dye. How about that? I'm just going to clean up all my little sticks. I know I could probably just throw these away, but the more I thought about it, because I used to just toss wooden sticks, I'm like, you know, whatever. Then I thought about it, I'm like, all it takes is wiping it off really quick, and that one's kind of jacked. And you can reuse it. So, I mean, even though they don't necessarily cost that much, you don't have to constantly replace them either. And one thing for me is I like to cut the large popsicles, like the normal size popsicle sticks that I use. I like to cut flats on the end of those. And that actually is a problem. Like that's a time suck, just cutting flats on your, what is this? Why do I have that? Cutting flats on those popsicle sticks. That's, talk about not something I want to be doing with my time. Always appreciated the post-mixing movement of the resin. What causes it? I think heat, air bubbles, both heat and air bubbles, I think is probably what's causing the majority of that. For anybody that hasn't seen it, go check out Ben's Works on YouTube. It's BENSWORX, I believe. Maybe WERX, I'm not sure. It'll probably populate if you just type in Ben's WOR, what, you know, either way. It'll probably figure out what you're trying to do. He's got videos where he's got a GoPro in the pressure pot, and so you can really see the effects of what happens over time, you know, while the resin's like actually, you know, curing in the pressure pot. It's really interesting. But you get a lot of like swirling around and there's a lot of movement going on. It doesn't just kind of sit there. For us, you know, we are waiting until the end of the working time with Alumilite Clear, and there's just not, you know, the working time, like it's going to harden within like 15 to 20 minutes. Like it's like hard, you know, like solid, not like hard, but like a solid material within like 15 minutes. So I don't know that you'd get as much of an interesting thing with a quicker setting resin necessarily, like, but your typical epoxies that are like a 30-minute working time and like an 8-hour in the pressure pot kind of deal. A lot of stuff is going on, and that really, you know, it really illustrates how kind of difficult it is to work with some of those things. Like you really got to, the timing thing is interesting. And so I think it'd be interesting to, you know, pop a GoPro in and see the differences between, like, you know, the whatever Ben's use. Usually I think he's using like a kind of an epoxy kind of thing. A lot of times I want to say that he really doesn't do a lot of like color swirl kind of things. It's like clear a lot of times. If I remember correctly, I haven't watched a lot of his videos lately, but I think it'd be kind of an interesting thing to see what's the difference between that type of resin and pouring it right away, and see if you can kind of see some of these effects in, you know, for what we do for like pen blanks. I don't know. You get a lot more movement the bigger the mold is. Like if you're pouring, like the bigger the cavity, I guess, or whatever. If you're pouring like a big, you know, 4-inch PVC pipe worth of resin, like there's going to be a lot more movement. Or even like, you know, a brick compared to a PVC pipe, or, you know, like just a thin tube. Heck, even a 1.5-inch pipe versus a 3/4-inch pipe, it's like night and day how much movement and things are going on in there. And it tells me, you know, I usually pour when I'm just doing my pen blanks, like color swirls, 2-3 colors or whatever in this mold, or even a PVC pipe. But I mean, I can pour it like 85 degrees right now, and it's 68 in my shop. I could pour it 85, and I'm really not going to get a ton of color bleed, most likely. Part of that is I'm not pouring huge amounts in there, but there's just not a lot of room for that resin. A lot of it's going to trail down the side of that tube, and there's just nowhere for it to go anyway once it gets in there. Compared to like a 1.5 inch PVC pipe, 6 inches tall, like it's going to be all over the place. So you really have to wait like till probably right now. I'd be waiting till like 110 Fahrenheit. Same exact resin, same everything, same temperature in the shop, and I would have to wait till like 110 for it to not just be like a mess, just color bleed everywhere. So it really illustrates some interesting stuff about resin. All right, so let me see. I'm going to go through and see if does anybody have any questions about 3D printing, casting, whatever. Doesn't matter what the question is really. But mainly, if anybody has any questions about like resin print or just 3D printing in general that we can talk about before I get going. We'll have to do the honeycombs and test these out I wanted to try these round ones in the Gatling mold. Whew, some of these are really not going to fit. It's probably a good thing we didn't do that one yet. I think I need to print some smaller honeycombs, honestly. So let me get rid of my gloves because they're just sticky. And we'll see what's happening. Nikki's here. What's up? A1 is $460. Wow, that's pretty expensive. I think I'd just go for the $699. Oh, $300 without the color carriage. Okay, that's a little better. Yeah, so Mark was talking about he turned one of the 3D printed honeycomb from Jake. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure what material he's using, but yeah, the heat with the filament style 3D printing stuff, it's just not awesome for sanding. If you're heating it up while you're cutting it, turning. Drilling, I would say, is actually the worst. That is by far the worst thing with those normal filaments because, think about it. I mean, those plastics are the way they work. They literally melt and then they lay it down. But I mean, you could remelt it. It's not like it's a one-time deal. Like you can remelt it once it hits a certain temperature. And so they're very affected by temperature changes. Like once it gets it to a certain point, it's going to change the properties of it and soften a lot easier than Alumilite or casting resins and stuff. And even really, you got a much higher temperature resistance with the resin printing stuff because it's kind of very similar to it's like casting resin for the most part. So that's interesting. So like I said, they're turnable. It's not like it's just not the best option out there. But when you're drilling your tubes out, be very, I would recommend, don't drill down more than like a 1/4 inch at a time and then clear the chips. Otherwise, it just kind of gets stringy, it heats up, it melts, and it wraps up on your drill bit, and it's just not fun. And you're most likely destabilizing the bond with the resin, the Alumilite that you cast. And so it may not be that you blew the blank up on the lathe. It may be that you drilled it, overheated that material, and it delaminated. Then when you turned it, it just came apart because it was already hanging on by a thread at that point. Let's see here. Okay, I'm just scrolling. Yeah, light cuts and all that kind of stuff, definitely. Good suggestions, CJ. Let's see. And I would probably go with, it's a tough call because if you got a brittle material, I would recommend a negative rake. But in this case, I think I'd almost rather get more of a shear cut. So you might actually, it's kind of the same thing that I was saying. Sometimes it's good to have negative rake as well as the standard cutters, because the standard ones may give you a better cut, even though it's a little bit more aggressive technically. But you can lighten that by turning the tool itself at an angle. You're still getting a slightly more, it's just a sharper edge with the standard cutters. But if you tilt it down, you're still going to get that advantage, but you're making it a little bit less aggressive if you can just bring that handle up just a little bit when you're turning. So you might try, both of those. Yeah, we did a lot of things. There was a billion colors, I know. Silk filament. Oh wow, yeah. And I don't, I'm not very familiar with a lot of the newer ones. I don't know what, like there's PLA, carbon fiber. I don't know. And the tough thing is, like, you really, like I was saying, for us, if you're doing it to make pen blanks, it's not like you can be like, oh, it printed good. Like, okay, it printed. Now I got to cast it and wait for that to, cure. Then you got to turn it and see, so it's such a long turnaround time from, design to finished product per, filament, basically. You got to do a lot of that stuff. So it takes time. Yeah, I know. I need to drink. It's true. I just hope the big thing with the ones that we just poured, I really hope that it just wasn't. The nice thing is we did wait. I mean, it was starting to get, I don't think it was like overly, like I waited too long. I don't think that was the case. I think I was like, oh, I better hurry. It's like, ready. I just hope we didn't get too much of it just, kind of mixing around and kind of blowing out some of the different colors in there. We'll have to see though. So I'll probably post a thing tomorrow on the Reels and YouTube Shorts, just, demolding them. Let's see here. Jake's using PETG. Oh, that's a pretty good one. Yeah. I got pretty good results with that. I actually really like that. When I was making the red pinstripe blanks, a while now, everything I do that's for sale is made with the resin printers. But when I was using FDM for the Philly pinstripe, it's the red material. I was using PETG for that, and those turned great. I really like that stuff. It was a different brand, filament, so I don't know if that matters. But let's see here. Let's see. Oh, he first started with the PLA. Yeah. And like I said, even I know under Bamboo's filaments, I think it's like a PLA carbon fiber, which I don't know, that might, that's the thing, is if you can get like these like kind of hybrid mixtures, maybe you can get the best of both worlds. I don't know. And actually, I don't know if is Nikki still here? Because Nikki's got a lot of experience with 3D printing, like the FDM. She used to run a print farm, so she has answers. I'd love to actually hear what she has to say about the Bamboo Labs printers, or Bamboo Lab, whatever, those things. Oh, okay. And there's also, what was the two that caught my eye were the PLA carbon fiber and one of the other carbon fiber mixes. The thing is, the carbon fiber is going to be like abrasive probably when you're turning it. So it's tough. Like they haven't made a material that, like, what we need a material that needs to be printed at like 500 degrees Fahrenheit. So like, drilling is not going to destabilize or change it, like melt it. You need something like that. You need it to get to like and I don't know if they even test it this way, but you need to get it up to 80. What is the 80D on the, is it Rockwell hardness scale? Whatever scale I'm thinking of. I think it's Rockwell D. Is that right? Rockwell? Nikki is here. I don't know, whatever the hardness level is for Alumilite, get it to that same hardness. But then there's also a couple other things. There's like a tensile strength and an elongation, whatever. I don't exactly know what all these numbers mean, but I'm pretty sure elongation is the one that says if it's brittle or not. It's not the hardness. That's definitely not the brittle factor. I think it's the elongation one. Tensile strength as well. I think those both kind of go together. But just looking at different resins and looking at specs for different types of resins, like 80 is a really good number for resins. And that's actually, that's why I'm using the ABS-like stuff, because it's 80 for hard. It's the same exact hardness as Alumilite clear. And it's got a pretty good elongation. The thing is, I don't know if those specifications are exactly the same as what, casting resins. I don't know if it's all the same, but UV resin is basically either an epoxy or a urethane. It's just a polymer or a what is it? What do they call it? Thermochromic, whatever. It's cured by UV rays rather than like a two-part mixture. So, most of the UV resins out there for like gluing stuff together, that stuff is pretty much very similar to casting resins as well. So, you like the Raise 3D? Yeah, I didn't know if you had any thoughts about them. We were kind of talking about that. I don't know. I don't know. I just want a printer that works. Like that's what for the people that don't want to tweak around and mess around with stuff, most of the reviews and what people say about Bamboo Labs, very appealing to me. I don't really care if I have to pay for your specific filament. I don't really care so much that I'm locked into your products. If I can unbox it and it just works, I don't want to mess with the printer. I just want to print, as easy as possible. So I don't know. I'm thinking about maybe looking into those. Ultem. Yeah, like I said, there's a few specs that need to kind of match up, but I don't know if we're ever going to get to the point where a thing that melts plastic, because there's two different types. I don't know exactly what's going on. There's exothermic, or no, what is it? There's two different types of plastics. One of them can, like the recyclable ones, can be like remelted over and over again to a point, kind of. And then there's the ones where like they create, heat cures them basically, and then there's no recycling. And that's what casting resins and many of them are. And that's the thing, is you're kind of using, I don't know if they're ever going to work together the best, doing it on an FDM printer. Yeah, you don't really have to use their filament, but to get the easy, if you use their things and use their slicer and you do, that's the whole point of the system. Otherwise, yeah, why would you buy a proprietary brand one to do that? And in some cases, some of them don't even let you use other ones, but I don't know. Like I said, I've got my eye on the Creality K1 as well, and that doesn't fall into that. You can do whatever you want. It's like open source, I think. Raise, yeah, I looked at Raise 3D a while ago. I don't know. I'm not sure where they stack up. I haven't heard much about them lately. Everybody's got LiDAR detectors, and it's crazy now. I don't know. Okay, so I don't think there's any other questions. Like I said, again, I'm not an expert. I just have opinions about a lot of this stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean I know what I'm talking about at all, but at least I'm giving it to you from my perspective. And like I said, also from the perspective of, if you talk to somebody that's printing like the miniature figurine things, they're going to have extremely different expectations and opinions about certain printers, certain settings, certain options that come with them. Or, you know, people that are printing engineering parts. Like, I don't really care if there's like some layer lines and things that I can see, because we're just going to turn it and sand it. Like, who cares? As long as it's not like separating, right? So a lot of the stuff, I don't really care about the quality of the print. And so that's one thing to say. Like, if you can find a used printer, there are some nice features on the newer ones. You know, they always get better, the lighting sources and all that kind of stuff. But to be honest, for our purposes, the quality of the original resin 3D printers is perfectly fine. And you can probably buy like an original Mars. I would try to get the one that's a mono screen. I'm not going to go into that, but that's just going to make things a lot faster. So if you can step up to like the Mars 2, I know the Mars 2 Pro, if you can find one used or something like that, or maybe new still, they're like, I don't know, 6 years old. But that's the thing, is like the quality of the print doesn't even matter for what we're doing, because we're going to just machine it and turn it. It just has to do things as easy. I want to find something that's as easy as possible for us, you know? So, Elegoo was like bamboo? I guess. A little different though. I mean, you can use whatever resin you want, you know. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. Thermoplastic and thermoset. There you go. Any cubic. Yeah, everybody's got their own. I think for me, I really like the Frozen. I think that's a pretty good brand. Everything that I've seen from them, it's a pretty good quality, it seems like. But honestly, they're probably all coming out of the same factory. But I'll tell you what, there is one brand that really caught my eye. That I was telling you about there's like a super proprietary brand of resin printers. It's made by Higgins. If you guys want to check into this, like look at a pretty cool looking system. Check out, just look up, just you know, like search on YouTube Higgins. You'll find, I think it's Higgins. Reflex, I think is what it's called. Ultra Craft Reflex. So I'll just give you everything. So Higgins is the company that makes this Ultra Craft Reflex. This printer is pretty awesome. Like, they've got like a whole package. And so that company, Higgins, that's a weird name, but they do like industrial stuff for like dental, you know, like that, like the retainers and all that kind of stuff. Like dentists are just 3D printing stuff. So like we're talking like super commercial. Like they came from like, you know, you didn't buy a, you know, $300 printer from them. Like they were like $50,000 probably or something like that. So like kind of like industrial resin 3D printing, and then they just made this one that's like for consumer, you know, hobbyist people. But this thing is like so ridiculous, but it's super proprietary. Like you have to use their resin, you know, parts availability. I don't know. It's not, they're not using anything that all the other printers use, like screens. You know, I'm sure that's different. So it's one of those things that you're buying in, it's expensive, but man, I'll tell you what, this thing, it fills the resin vat for you. You never touch the resin. Like it doesn't even come out of the bottle. Like there's a lot of crazy stuff. They even have a color matching system for the resin. There's a lot of things that I like about it, but man, it's like, to be honest, so the printer's $1,500 from them, which really, that's not that much money. And it's way more than all the rest of them, you know, like your Elegoos and Frozen and Anycubic and all that. Way more than those. But in the scheme of things, I mean, you know, like the Bamboo Labs, the whatever, X1C, I mean, that thing's like $1,500, I think, right? So in the realm of like consumer level printing, it's not that much money. But like the resin is like 2 or 3 times as much as like Elegoo. So they kind of get you here and there. But I have a feeling that it's probably a pretty good experience if you just want to literally pull a resin printer out and it just does what you tell it to. It's probably pretty good. Oh, he used the Higgins. Oh, nice. That's cool. Yeah. They seem like, you know, all the rest of the stuff. I have no clue how much those things cost. Like the professional commercial resin 3D printing. Probably ridiculous, but. All right, guys, I got to get going. So we'll get some results on these blanks tomorrow, probably. Maybe Monday if I don't get into the shop and get everything that I need to get done. But I can't wait to see how these things look. So we still have those tests. I wanted to kind of try shoving some prints, some of the round ones in this, but man, I don't know. I think I'm going to need to print. I printed these a while, like years ago. I think I'm going to need to shrink and reprint because it just, it might work. I don't know. It'll definitely, I usually recommend, you know, if you're going to be, even for like the PVC pipe, I usually recommend kind of giving yourself some wiggle room on the outsides. Even though there is a hole in the middle and all that stuff, it's just so much, things are going to go smoother if it just slides into the tube easily. So. Anyway, guys, so have a great evening. Big thank you to everybody that super chatted and good color choices. We you guys made me work on that one. It was fun trying different stuff out. Sorry that the white dye didn't really do much. It is, you know, we learned a lesson though. I mean, I think I've typically mentioned that, you know, whites are usually going to lighten. If you add white dye to any color, mica or not, it's going to lighten the color. If you add black, it's going to darken it. So hopefully you kind of saw that. But it changed it. I don't know that I've ever really added a lot of like white dye. I've added black to like red mica powders just to darken it, and that works extremely well, like at least with red. With that purple, it just kind of muddied it a little bit too much for me. I don't know. I think it's going to look fine, but I don't know. I think you're better off, I guess. Here's what I would do. If you want to get like an opaque with a little bit of sparkle pop, I would actually just go for like maybe a divine pigment where it's just opaque pigment. Start with that. Get the color that you want. Another way you could do it is just mix white dye with Alumilite's violet or whatever, and you can kind of adjust colors and all that stuff. But start with your dye, and then if you want some pearl or whatever, you can maybe try adding some of like the micro pearl or micro starlight glitter type stuff. Or I think the simplest way to go is just add some macro sparkle. Whatever, mica powder. That it's going to lighten it a little bit. Again, it's white, right? So it's going to lighten the color. So, you know, you might have to kind of play around with that a little bit, but I think that's probably the better way to get what I'm thinking might have been in your mind, Tim. So anyway, just a little parting thought. So anyway, guys, have a wonderful evening. We'll get some results, and then we'll probably turn one of these guys up next Saturday and see how these things actually look. Because, you know, you can take them out of the mold, but that doesn't really tell you a whole lot of what's really going on inside. So we're going to have to turn one up, and then we'll get back to, you know, even more experiments after that. So anyway, guys, thanks for joining the fun tonight. Have a great evening, and I'll see you guys on the next stream.